Turn your living room into a joyful, hands-free playroom with CoComelon Sing and Play with JJ. Your child sings, moves, and learns right alongside JJ and friends, all on the big screen. It's designed thoughtfully to spark speech, rhythm, and coordination through songs and active play. Try an ad-free, safe, and interactive way to make screen time part of their learning and growth. Parents love how easy it is, voice-controlled and frustration-free. Kids love every moment of singing, laughing, and playing along. It's fun for them, and it's feel-good for you. Available now in the Volley app on your smart TV. Just search Volley in your TV's app store and start your free trial of CoComelon Sing and Play with JJ today. That's CoComelon Sing and Play with JJ. Available now in the Volley app on your smart TV. Search Volley and start your free trial today.
Volley. Welcome to Homeschooling Outside the Box, the podcast that encourages and equips moms to homeschool an outside-the-box child.
Hello, everybody. This is Cindy. Thanks so much for listening. Today, I have Brandy Vencel, host of Scholé Sisters podcast and the writer behind the fabulous blog Afterthoughts. Brandy, you want to say hello?
Hello.
Brandy is a homeschooling mom, and today we are really going to talk about encouraging mothers. So I know all you moms out there listening, Mother's Day has passed by the time you're hearing this, but there's no wrong time to encourage mothers. So that is really going to be our focus today. So Brandy, can you talk to us a little bit about your background and your family and kind of how you began homeschooling, and if you want to throw in how Charlotte Mason plays into that?
Sure. Okay, so I live in California. I have 4 children. They are easy ages for me to remember right now, but we're just about to have a birthday, at which point I'll be able to not remember anybody's age, but they are 10, 12, 14, and 16 right now. And we've homeschooled from the very beginning. I'm trying to remember if we knew, I think we actually knew before our first child was born that we were interested in homeschooling. And it was sort of a combination of things. So, I mean, some of it really was like a weird combination of snobbery and fear. So not necessarily the best foot to start off with, but I think there was this, like I noticed a number, not all, but I noticed a number of elementary education majors that when I was in college that were not readers and didn't particularly love learning. Mm-hmm. And that concerned me because I think I sort of instinctively knew that sometimes those attitudes were contagious, and those were attitudes I didn't want my children to have. Right. And so, I mean, the fear, I know some people have fear of like guns in school or whatever. The fear really was just that fear that they wouldn't turn out, I guess, the way I want, as far as their loves of learning and reading and growing and all. Like, I was afraid that wouldn't be there if they went to really any school, because I didn't see a significant difference where I was at the time between like a private school and a public school as far as the product that was produced at the end.
Right. Yeah.
But I mean, on top of that, so when we first got married, we lived in this little tiny garage apartment. So it was over a garage. This apartment was over 100 years old, big Victorian house in the front. And it was full. The family of 8 they were sort of former homeschoolers. So they put their kids into junior high and high school, but they had homeschooled for years and years, elementary school. And they were really, really neat family. All of the kids were adopted. All of them had various issues. Some of them had been, drug babies. And so they had some mental issues, all sorts of things going on. Really amazing family. And so I think that was the first time that I really met an interesting homeschool family. Like, I had just kind of noticed homeschoolers from afar before that. But this family, each of the kids was obviously so loved by the parents, but then also they were just so unique. Like, they all had their own interests. They weren't just your little like cookie cutter kid of pop culture. And so I think that was the first time that I really felt like, wow, like homeschoolers are the kids are interesting themselves, and they have interests that haven't been, squashed by peer pressure or whatever.
Sure.
And so I think that was where I started getting a more positive vision for homeschooling, that maybe we could actually use education to, reach a goal or something.
Right. Sure.
Not that we have total control, but so I think that was really, those were the early days. I was probably, I don't know, 22 when we were having those thoughts. So it was a long time ago. But then, we actually had children, and we left Los Angeles and moved to a place that we felt like was more friendly for kids, and start raising a family. And I discovered, blogs, and there were about 4 of them at the time.
Right.
One of them belonged to Cindy Rollins.
Oh.
And so she introduced me to Charlotte Mason. She introduced me to Ambleside Online, which is the curriculum that we've always used, but I even now serve on the board, but I didn't even know what it was when she was talking about it. And so she read books with us and led these interesting discussions. And she just opened this whole world to me that I had no idea existed, really. And so that's where it all started for our family and for me. And it's been an amazing journey. I mean, we're going to graduate our first student about a year from now. So
oh, how exciting.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
That is wonderful. And okay. So I think what's interesting too is, and Cindy Rollins is so great. I'll link to her stuff in the notes, because everyone needs to read Mere Motherhood. But she is so, and this is where we're going to dovetail our talk. She's so interested in the big picture and teaching. You're really learning alongside your kids with homeschool. And I think that's where Charlotte Mason really shines, because I would argue if people are trying to do school at home, or they're really textbook based, or they're, you can look at homeschool and you're not necessarily going to get what is offered when you start reading some of Charlotte Mason's things. And that is really focused on the mother, and the mother being sort of this vessel for learning. And Charlotte Mason, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, she's the one who coined the phrase mother culture. Am I right?
Well, sort of. Okay. So that's an interesting thing. So she edited a magazine called The Parents Review.
Okay.
And there was an article I'm trying to remember, it might have even been like the very first volume. No, I just looked it up. It was volume 3. I had it here in case we wanted to talk about it today. But this was 1892. So really early on in the life of her magazine. And that article was written by someone that we only know as A. She only used her first initial. And her article was called Mother Culture. So whether she named it that, or Charlotte Mason as the editor named it that, I mean, I don't really know. I know that Charlotte Mason she was not a heavy-handed editor at all. I do know that she had a reputation of leaving her authors with much freedom. But anyway, that's where the term comes from. So it's sort of her in that, she was the editor of the magazine, but she actually wasn't the writer.
That is so interesting, because I know it gets, well, and obviously in her work, it's sort of underlying throughout, it's not coined, but I'd always thought that attributed to her. I would love to, we're going to side note real quick. Does Ambleside make the articles available?
They do. Yes. Okay. So, when you go to their
available, but I didn't know if the Parents Review. Okay.
She does. No, they're not all there. We have a team that's always typing articles. And so there were so many hundreds, if not thousands of pages that were published over the long life of the magazine. So they are not all up. But there are entire volumes that are there, and they're still working on them. So it really is incredible.
Such a labor of love. That's so valuable. But let's talk a little bit about the idea of mother culture. Okay. So what is it? We kind of know where it came from now, but what does it mean?
Okay. So I feel like I have to be really careful because there's mother culture with the trademark. I don't know if you've seen that. So I have to be careful.
Okay. So what is the idea of a mother developing?
Really?
We'll get around this. Developing her culture.
Yeah, really. So, I'll just say the mother culture with the trademark is, I believe, a book that just recently came out that's written by Karen Andriola,
Okay.
who I've never actually read any books by her, but I know that she's the reason why Charlotte Mason's volumes were published in the United States. And I don't know if it was the late 80s or early 90s. I have some of those original pink copies that, old school moms carry around.
Yeah.
And
she did Pocket Full of Pine Cones too, right? Wasn't that her?
Yes. I've never read that, but I've heard of a lot of her things. I just have never, I don't know why I've never read her. I just haven't. But so my understanding, just from, I've seen some things on Instagram and stuff, is that her definition is a lot broader than what I use when I've talked about this, because I have always just talked about this particular article because that's where I got the idea, was just reading this article. What I like about this article, though, is it actually has a very strict definition. Okay. And so because of that, it's really easy to like define it and know what it is.
Right.
So ultimately, it is, according to this article, it is a mom reading for 30 minutes a day. That's like the bottom line. Now, there's a lot that goes into that, like the why and the how, but that really is what her definition is. So the how is that she says that basically the author, I wish we knew her name because I hate saying she so many times.
Right.
But this author, she says that, basically she knew this amazing woman who had gotten so much reading done, even though she had health issues and she had a lot of children in a busy house to run. And she asked her how she did this. And basically she said, I always have 3 books going. I have a stiff book, which is, hard book. And I have this moderately easy book, and I have a novel, and I just pick up the one that I feel fit for. And so mother culture is this reading of 30 minutes a day. But one of the hows in pulling it off is having more than one book going so that you can pick up one that you actually feel like reading.
That is so true. I often we'll have a car audio going. I'll have one in my purse. I kind of hide them throughout the house because that's the only way it happens. But I love that idea of having one that's really challenging. Right now I'm listening to C.S. Lewis, Mere Christianity. And so there are days where I'm like, I'm just too exhausted. I can't do it. I can't think. I need to read, just some good fiction or something. But that's a great, because I think people probably get stuck thinking, they're committed to one book. And then if they're not used to, depending on what they're reading, if they're not used to some of the language or some of those classics can be very, Dickens takes some investment. At
least a 1-year commitment.
Right. And so sometimes you're like, my goodness, I'd like to just read something short and quick, but still valuable, without sacrificing quality. And you can do that so her idea was by varying the levels of what you're reading.
Yes.
And that's really what I want to get into today, because I'm a firm believer that you cannot pour out what is not in you. So, I mean, if you're on empty, there's nothing to draw from. So you're just, the more filled up you are, the more you can pour out to your kids. And so that is definitely what is happening when you're doing this mother culture, when you're doing the reading. Now, you wrote an article. This is one of my favorite articles that you've written, and correct me on the title. It's Starving. Are you starving your children?
Yeah.
Is that the exact title? I love it. So it's so catching. I'm like, let me read this. Am I? And so can you talk to us about the idea of what were you aiming at there? And then how does that apply to mothers?
Oh, that's a good question. We'll start with, so really the idea of starving, a person, so a child in this case, intellectually or spiritually, it's really based on a philosophical assumption. And that's just a principle from Charlotte Mason's philosophy, where she talks about, ideas being the food of the mind. So she always is using this analogy of, learning being a feast, or you're feeding the mind. And so she draws these parallels, and she basically says, we know how the body grows, right? Like it needs good food, and it needs sleep, and it needs clean air, it needs sunshine. Like we know all of the things that go into nourishing a body. And we know that if it's not growing, then something's going wrong. And so then she says, the same of the mind and the soul, right? So the Bible would be specifically the food of the soul, right? And prayer and those kinds of things. But with the mind, she kind of felt like the mind was neglected, that people didn't think of the mind as something that itself needed to be fed. So she thought the mind, like the body, needed its square meals every day, as they used to talk about. And so for her, the food of the mind is ideas, and ideas come packaged in the best books that are written.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how she's going to grow the mind, is by feeding it these ideas.
Right. And I think mothers, we get so caught in just the daily, even if we do have a quiet time, which I so recommend. I feel like if I don't do that, I'm just useless for the rest of the day.
Mm-hmm.
But if I can wake up and I do, I've got my devotional and I read whatever part I'm in the Bible, but it's so valuable to me also to tack on something that challenges me mentally also, and having that, it does feel like a more full feast in her, in her language of ideas. That feels like it can challenge me in a good way. So yours, I'm sure you think that mothers are starving as well.
I really do think so. And I think lots of times with Christian women, they might remember the soul. So they might remember the need to read the Bible, but they don't necessarily remember the mind and the need of the mind itself to be fed. And not that the Bible can't feed the mind, but that there is something to be said for more intellectual stimulation. And I know for me, also, and this is sort of an aside, because I don't think this is really, like in the mother culture, this isn't really the purpose that's presented. But I think for me too, when you're overwhelmed, your world gets really small.
Yes.
And you start reading like self-help books, which actually, not to knock those, because I've read a million of them.
Sure. Right.
But they do keep you in that same small world, looking at the same problem. And I think like when our worlds shrink down that small, we can start to have a really disproportionate view of what's going on. I look back on the early days of motherhood and what a big deal I made out of some things that are they're just laughable. But I was just tired and had a really small life.
Yeah, no, you're right. That's exactly what it is. It's that small life. It's just your whole world shrinks to, make a meal, clean up a meal, change a diaper, sleep. It's just all these teeny tiny, and it lifts your eyes out of that. I remember going to the library once, and all the kids were young. I've got 4. So right now they're 12, 10, and 5. But this was when the first 3 were like small. So we would go to the library every week and, story time and whatever. But I went to the library all by myself, and I went and checked out 3 books. And I was so proud of myself because they were for me. And I went to the counter to check out. And I kid you not. I'm like, I told the librarian, who knew me very well at checkout, and I said, look, I'm so proud. It's actually books for me. And without cracking a smile, she said, does it really count if they're about the children? And I thought, I hate you because you're right. No, I guess it does. It was just, it's like you were talking about, and for us, it was like books on autism or books on diet or, whatever it was. I was still in the same cage. I wasn't looking out at the rest of the world. And I had that experience after I graduated from college. I have a degree in writing. So, what a cool major. Like my job was just to read excellent literature for years. So, awesome. I'd read all these heavy, intense novels, and after I graduated that summer, with a writing degree, you are fully qualified to waitress. Not to mention, I was engaged to a Marine who was at that time stationed. My husband was stationed at the time in Okinawa. So, I mean, I was not starting my career. I was sort of just waiting for life to start. So I went and got a job as a waitress. And I just remember feeling like I was just mentally starving to death. That's probably why your article resonated with me so much. I just felt like, oh my gosh, I can feel my brain shrinking. And it was just that lack of ideas. It was, do you want chips or fries? Do you want chips or fries? Like that, that was the depth of my questioning at that point in my life. So I love that about our world shrinking. So the idea of getting all this good input, these deeper ideas really grows our worldview, and that will help us to prioritize our lives because we're not majoring in the minors. We're not getting all flustered about these tiny details necessarily.
Yes.
So on the other side of that coin, how does feeding ourselves then help us, not just for our well-being, but how does that help us to better feed our children, do you think?
I really feel like this is one of the most, I don't know, I guess I would say profound things that I think I have found in Charlotte Mason's philosophy. And I wouldn't say it's immediately evident, at least it wasn't to me. So, I mean, I think I read her for years and years without really noticing this. But, she talks about, for example, when she talks about physical education, she talks about, what's the purpose of that? And she says it's the making of heroes, in the sense that a well-trained body is more able to do its duty than a weak body. And we all know that, like, I have had chronic health problems most of my life. And I mean, there are so many times when it is my body that stops me from being able to do what I feel like I ought to do, or what I feel like I need to do, or whatever. So, we know the limitations of having like a sick or weak body. Well, right. her whole focus of physical culture was this outward focus. Well, then I started noticing it everywhere with her. And there is such this outward focus of all of these things fit us to do our duty in the world, fit us for the jobs that God gave us. Right. And so, when it comes to anything that's sort of like mommy me time, lots of times that can turn into a pursuit of self. Right. But with her, it was always the pursuit of, I suppose I would say, like, improving the self, though I don't think she would have said it that way, but it was always for the sake of others. And we even see that, like, sure. In her, in memoriam, it was written after she died, and it was these memories of her friends. They would say things like, she read these books that she could better give to us. Mm. So they observed, like, she actually lived that. So yeah. I guess I kind of, if to think of an analogy, I think of it sometimes like, it's sort of like breastfeeding, right? Like, we know that the nutrient content of breast milk, it changes based upon the mother's diet, right? So if she's deficient in something, then that is deficient in something. And I think sometimes, like, that can be a really powerful parallel. Like, if my intellectual diet, my soul diet is deficient, well, the Bible says what? Out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. So that's right. What's going to come out of my mouth. And when I'm giving advice to my children, when I'm talking in front of them with my friends, what's going to come out of me is what's already there. Right. So when I think of this whole idea of, like, the feeding ourselves helps us to feed our children, I actually think of, that original food that we give our children, and about how that becomes metaphorical for what we're doing as mothers. Right. That's so good. That makes total sense too. And I think the Bible does talk so much about wisdom and seeking wisdom. I mean, and you're modeling that I would say most homeschool moms would at least agree, if not say it's in like their top 5 reasons for homeschooling, that part of it is to raise thinkers. We want to raise children who love to learn. Mm-hmm. And you can't do that if you don't read, and if you don't seek
wisdom, and we have so many resources today that it's just ridiculous. The statistics you hear about, how little people are reading just on their own.
Yeah.
Or who just don't prioritize it because you can just Google it or whatever the reason behind it is, but people who are not actively seeking knowledge. So I think that's such good modeling too, is for us to say, hey, I'm learning about this. I'm growing myself. This is not something we just shut off at a certain time. And I've always said that's why we homeschool year round. Our schedule alters, but I didn't ever want to send the message like, this is learning. Now, I'm glad that's over. Let's take a break, which I know does not work for some people are different, but that was in my heart to just send that message about it being this constant thing. So I think
that's the best reason I have ever heard for year-round schooling. I've never heard anyone say that before. I really like that.
And all the math you lose. That's another podcast. It comes out to like 6 months of just review if you do it in that way. I'm like, oh my goodness. Okay, but anyway, let's talk about hard books. Okay, so let's say I'm a mom, I'm listening to this. This is all new to me. I've not been kind of educating or keeping up. I'm just sort of reading books to my children, which is a benefit of a Charlotte Mason education because you're already reading a lot of excellent things. So you sort of get it whets your appetite to sort of be doing that on your own, or at least, you're doing it alongside the children at least. But what makes a book hard? So if I'm wanting to pick these 3 books, like you mentioned, how would I know what a hard book is? And then how would I pick sort of easier books without entering the realm of twaddle?
Oh, that's a really good question. Okay, so with hard books, I really think there's 2 things that can make a book hard. So the first is just what probably most of us think of with hard books, and that would be the actual reading level. Like, this has big words and complex sentence structure. Like, I think of Shakespeare or Plutarch, like usually it's antiquated English and it's super hard to read, or maybe it's really technical. So it's like a science book and it has lots of specialized words we don't know. So to me, that's like the first level of being a hard book. But I recently became aware. So I put out a list, actually every May usually. So it should be coming out soon, but I do a couple lists, and one of them is the summer mother culture reading list. And so I do, like stiff books, moderately easy books, and novels. And I had someone come up to me when I was speaking at a great homeschool convention, and she said, you put this on your moderately easy list, and it was so stiff for me.
Right.
I thought she was talking about reading level. And my first thought was like, that's strange. I didn't think that book was a difficult book. But as I talked to her, it was because the ideas, it was almost like going through really difficult therapy. Like, she was having to confront things about herself, and she hadn't expected that. So it was a parenting book, but it made her face things that were going wrong in her house. And so it was a really emotional read for her. Yeah. And that made it a hard book, even though, the phonics behind reading the words, I mean, that part wasn't the hard part. So I've kind of nuanced my definition of hard books over the last year after talking to some of these moms, because I realized that I had just thought of it purely as like the intellectual part, like this sentence is difficult to understand.
Right.
But I think it also can be that these ideas they're confronting me and telling me that I need to change in some way. And so to me, that puts it on the hard stack, because when you're talking about those days when we're used up and we're in the mood for an easy book, like, that's not the time.
That's not it. Right. Those things that will cause growing pains. I always think with Charlotte Mason's volumes, those are always in the hard category for me, just because it's so meaty. And I know, like, every couple of sentences, I have a commonplace book, like she recommends, and I find things that I want to copy into it by underlining. There's days I don't get through a page, right? Because there's so much in terms of ideas. So you're kind of saying, after talking to moms, it's not so much the sentence structure as the weight of the ideas in the books.
Yeah. Or at least it can be both. I mean, I do think that, I mean, you were telling me that part of your audience is dealing with kids with learning disability. There are moms with real learning disabilities. And so, a book can be hard for them just because they are dyslexic or whatever. So there is, I mean, I don't want to discount that. It's just the soul work aspect of it was one that I just hadn't really considered until recently. And it is hard, but that I think that probably also then it should be said, like what you're saying, sometimes you don't even get through a whole page. That's fine. Because, we think of it like, if you're eating a really like heavy or rich dessert, you don't eat the whole pie. You have like this little sliver and that's enough. And some books are probably always going to be that way. And that's okay. Like they're still feeding ideas to the mind. Our mind can grow on just that small of a portion because it's like the superfood of books, right?
Right.
So we don't eat a huge portion with the
right. And so would you find as moms, and maybe in your own walk, I know this was true for me. I shared, I went from college where I was reading all these all this high level literature. And then I sort of went through this lull. And then it was like, after a few years, I picked up Jane Austen and I thought, oh my gosh, like, I was exhausted. And I wouldn't say her ideas are extremely heavy, but just being out of that vocabulary, out of that sentence structure, out of that, like being out of that for so long, it was difficult to get back into it. So you look at maybe some of these moms who came out of the regular education system, did not really read for fun or entertainment at all. And then they're thinking, okay, I want to educate myself. And they pick up Austen or Dickens. And that can be very discouraging because you think this is a good book. This is a classic, a hard book. I should read this. I should be able to read this. But that's why the layering as well, right? The kind of the easier books.
It was John Senior. He said that a child should read the 1,000 good books before reading the 100 great books. And not that that's an exact number. It was just a thing that he said. Sure. But I think as moms too, I mean, I think it's okay to read, like a really good YA novel.
Right.
It's okay to work up to that reading level. I mean, I think for me, because I went through that same thing. I got out of graduate school and I didn't read a book for, other than my Bible for maybe 2 years or something. The occasional board book. That was about it. Right. But, so how did I get my reading level back? Because I had one when I was in college.
Right.
And it really was, it was reading the board books and then reading the picture books and then reading, we'd Ambleside Online. So we read year 1 and then we read year 2. Some of those books are hard.
Yes.
I had, year 2 making me read Pilgrim's Progress out loud. It was not easy.
Right.
But, all of a sudden I had a reading level again. And but it wasn't by, jumping in. I mean, I suppose you could jump into the deep end, but really it was that each book that was a little harder taught me how to read it and prepared me to read the next hard book or the even harder book. And so I think as mom, like we forget these things are a muscle. So even if we were great readers in high school, if we haven't read for 10 years, you don't use it, you lose it. And if you're reading, and if you've been reading on a screen, that can complicate things up. And not because I'm against screens. I mean, I'm a blogger,
Sure, right.
But it's a different muscle movement with your eyes to read on a screen versus to read on the page. And so you can actually lose some of the coordination required to read a book if you're not careful. So I always tell moms, like, it's not that you have to give up your Kindle, though some Kindles, this isn't true because you push and it flips a page like a book would. So you're actually not doing the scrolling thing. But it is important to sometimes read in a way that's not scrolling because it's a different eye movement.
Sure. But I think it's a habit too, because when you read online, often you are, and as a fellow blogger, I know you read those things, you're like, nobody goes past the first third of the page and everybody's you read the statistics on what people are actually reading of your, labor of love. And it's a little depressing because people are very much they're just scanning. They just want keywords. They want important information. Okay, how can this help me quickly? And so they're just skimming. And so when you sit down to a novel, and I even find myself, it's a discipline. You have to, okay, turn your brain. I'm not scanning for information. I'm reading every word, and that's where reading aloud really with the kids really trains you, because you think I would have skipped like both of those sentences. I would have skimmed through that and missed all of that. And so many authors, like, that's what makes them great is the details. And you think we just started The Adventures of Tom Sawyer today. That's going to be our car audio. And I told the boys, I said, Twain is like, you can't turn off for a second. He's not one you can just have on in the background and piece the story together. Like, you're going to miss all the little nuances and jokes and wit that make him a great author.
Right. You're
going to miss that if you tune out even for a minute, so, and that's how I feel about Charlotte Mason's books. You really have to read every single word. So it's just a whole different experience when you're approaching literature.
That's such a good point.
I think. Really, but okay, so reading these things, like we're talking about, really builds you up from within so you can pour out. And I know you said you come up with a book list. Is that something how would we access that? How would we get a hold of that?
I could, do you do show notes? I could send you a link.
I do. Yeah. If you have
show notes. Because I don't know what the link is going to be yet for this year's list, but I do have I do have a list I put out every summer, and it has a little downloadable habit tracker for people who want to actually track their reading over the summer. And so, I can send you the link for that. I mean, it's just, if they want to go and use the search bar on my blog, it probably Mother Culture, and that would pop up because I call it the Mother Culture reading list.
Awesome. That would be good, because I know that's what moms are thinking. Okay, well, where do I start? And we talked a little bit about hard books. What would you say qualifies a book as still being good, of high quality, but not as difficult? What are the other two levels like?
Oh, that's right. I skipped your twaddle question, didn't I?
I did. That's okay. I went off on a rabbit trail.
That's okay. I was thinking about this, that I think there is such a thing as light reading that is still good reading, and so we think about, the Frog and Toad books by Arnold Lobel, and, not all easy readers are silly. Those are classic American literature right there. And
yes,
they're beneficial for the mother to read as she's reading with her child. And so,
listen, Mr. Putter and Tabby is seriously on my top 10, like,
really?
Of all time favorite book. I love those books. And there's this one that Cynthia Rylant will just dump these profound thoughts right in the middle of this kid's book. And
so awesome.
Like the one she talks about, Tabby, this cat is rolling around in the tulip. She said, because she's old and beautiful things mean more to her. And I'm like, I
love that.
Yes, these little nuggets that are dry. So I think it's the ideas. And that's the same with Frog and Toad, the ideas of friendship and devotion.
Yes.
And
So when I think of twaddle, really, I think of it's trivializing. It's about the trivial things. It's not that it's just easy reading, because there's nothing inherently wrong with a book that's easy or gentle on you. Mm-hmm. If it calls you still, to greatness or to virtue or to repentance in some way, or inspires you to great things, or, as long as it has those enlivening ideas, I don't think it's a bad book. So when I think of twaddle, I just think of it being, it calls to my lesser self. I'm not an improved person from reading it. And I think at least for me, I think it just took time for me to develop a taste for good books. Before I was really able to discern the difference. Like, even now, I feel like it's hard for me to articulate exactly why I would classify any specific book as twaddle.
Right.
I mean, just ultimately, it's that there's some level of greatness, like what you were talking about with that profound statement about being older. Like there's just something that's missing. So it's not something that's necessarily in the book. It's something that's not in the book that's missing, which it makes it harder to like point out exactly what's wrong.
Right. But it's the whole idea of, counterfeit money, how they train people to, and if you see only the real thing, if you read only the real thing, then it's like it smacks you in the face when you see something that is not.
Yes.
And so it's much easier to say, oh, that doesn't belong on this shelf. I can't quite figure out why, but it just doesn't.
So true. So true.
So, and then in terms of a middle of the road book, what would you say kind of defines that?
I put a lot of just, like general nonfiction there, so my education books that aren't Charlotte Mason.
Right.
I'm trying to look at what do I have over there right now? I have, let's see, because I can see my stack from where I'm sitting. So I have Atomic Habits by James Clear, which, Charlotte Mason talks a lot about habit training. And I think that is like habit training for grownups right there in the modern world. Yeah. Such a good book. But, it's pretty easy to read. It's pretty cut and dry, but it's got some great ideas. It's got some real practical help, but it's not, it's not going to wear me out to read this book at all.
Right.
So those kind of, I've got a little book of Chesterton's essays. They're not hard to read. Mm-hmm. They make me laugh.
Yeah.
So I just always think of those as they're inspiring books and they're good books, but they're either not hard to read, technically in,
sure.
The sentence structure and all that kind of stuff, or, and I should say not or, and they're not hard to read in the sense that for me, just as an individual, it's not going to be a particularly emotionally taxing read. And that right. I think really varies by person. So, I can say, well, this isn't that hard of a reading level, but I really can't say to any particular person, this won't be emotionally hard for you because people struggle with things.
Sure. So. Yeah. It really does depend on the person. And then it's good to I always try to throw in, a biography, nonfiction. I'll get in a rut where it's like, I'm just reading all fiction and I'll catch myself. And I'll think, yeah. I really need to add maybe a biography here. That idea of the feast, of the varied reading is important, I think. Okay, so tell us, you told us about the book list you come out with every May. Tell us what you're up to, any new projects or speaking engagements. I know you've been at the Great Homeschool Convention this year.
I have been. I'll be at the California one in June. So that's I think what is that? Like the 15th of June, I think, that weekend I'll be there. But really the biggest thing I have going on right now, it starts on May 29th and it's a 2-session, I guess I'll call it, but it's just an end of the year online homeschool event. This is a new thing that I'm doing this year that I just, as I've been traveling and speaking, I just have realized, this is something I think will be really helpful, I hope, for people, but I'm calling it Flourish. It's basically an annual review for homeschools. And so my whole, I guess, theory on this is that, we often spend the summer, planning the next school year. Like sure. I would say most homeschoolers do this. I know that there are some that, end at Thanksgiving or whatever, but I always think about this, that like, in order to really plan, especially in a more Charlotte Mason or philosophical way.
Yeah.
So in order to look forward with wisdom, we really need to look back with wisdom first and like be moving forward based not just on our dreams. I could get carried away with my dreams.
Yes.
We really need to look back and see both how far we've come, but also what are the real things that need to be tackled next year? Not just, mom's idea of greatness for next year, but what's really going on. Part of the reason why I've developed this process, because it's a more formalized version of something I've been doing for a long time. And it really is because I can be, if I let myself be, a real head in the clouds mom where I'm not as attentive as I should be. And I don't notice important things until they're like big deals. Mm-hmm. And so some of this I just designed for myself to be a check-in to make sure that we were really being about what I wanted us to be about. I went into this with this grand vision, but has it all degenerated into, check the box and let mom read or whatever,
Yeah.
So for me, so there's a lot of like philosophical type teaching coupled with self-assessments of how we're doing as a mom, how the kids are doing, how our school as a whole is doing, all those different things. And I think it's going to be really fun. And there's going to be a little bit of homework in between the two sessions that I think is going to be super valuable. So I'm excited about it. It's May 29th. It's a Wednesday evening, but there will be replays because I know not everybody can show up on a Wednesday night. That's when I can show up.
Right.
But it's just 5 p.m. Pacific time. We're doing May 29th, and then the next week, same day, same time, June 5th. So pretty excited about that. It'll, do you want I can give you where it's not there right this second, but it will be I'm sure by the time this is live. But it's just afterthoughtsblog.net/flourish.
Okay. Very cool.
So I'm super excited about it. We did this whole, I do like an end of the year child interview process and all this stuff. So we actually developed a packet that's like a printable student assessment. You can print off one for each child and work through a little process with them and really just take stock of, more important things than like, where did we end up on math, or whatever.
Right.
So I'm excited about it. I like philosophy.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. I know that's going to be a big help to a lot of moms because you need to stop. And I think that would be the downside of schooling year round is it feels like it's just this ongoing thing. And so I do try to, we pause in May, we kind of end the school year and then do a loose summer, summer's a little bit looser, but that's a very important thing is to stop and look back and then plan forward instead of just going on aimlessly. So that sounds very valuable. All right, Brandy, how can listeners find you online?
Well, I'm on Instagram at Brandy Vencel. And then really the two big places would be the Scalay Sisters podcast, which is on all podcast players. And then my blog, which is afterthoughtsblog.net, and where people can go there and sign up for my weekly newsletter or look around. I've been blogging for so long that just promise me you won't try to read everything because there's over 2,000 articles on that site. You'll never come to the end.
Yeah, you were early in the game. When did you start? Was it 2009?
The end of 2005.
Oh
yeah.
My goodness. That's wonderful though that you're keeping it up because I'm sure you've seen many changes in the blogosphere.
Oh, the things that people can do now, we would never have dreamed. I still feel like we live in the Jetsons era because I just, it's just the idea of being able to do a webinar without leaving your house,
right.
I remember batting that around as an idea with people and it was like, that'll never happen.
That is so funny. Well, we are so glad that you're keeping up with it. Everybody excuse the noise. That was my neighbor decided to mow his lawn. And so I'm sure that's going to come over. My husband is great at tech and editing things out. I don't know that he can get rid of that. So if it's still there, I apologize for that. All right, Brandy, thank you so much for being on today. This was so much fun. And I feel like this is going to be a real encouragement to moms to motivate them to, that it's a worthwhile investment.
It is.
To be keeping up with their mother culture. All right.
Thanks for having me, Cindy.
Absolutely.
So nice to talk to you.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to Homeschooling Outside the Box. If you are loving the show, please consider heading over to iTunes and leaving a review. This is a really great way to help other moms find out about the show so they can be encouraged and equipped just like you are. For more encouragement for yourself, head over to cindyrenna.com. I've got blog posts on there. You can listen to past episodes of the podcast, and there's even a shop if you're looking for something to help equip you more in your homeschool. Things like book lists and a nature journal and all sorts of fun stuff. So thanks again for listening, and I will talk with you soon. Bye-bye.